Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gather around for a multi-part series on the Nintendo Wii U in comparison to the Nintendo Switch. What's going on, everybody? It's Zach from SwitchForce. Gabe is here, and we've got our blankets, we've got our popcorn, we've got our sody pops, and we are ready for a little fireside chat about year one of the Switch versus year one of the Wii U. And we definitely want to get you guys' take. Give us all your thoughts and opinions and insights in the comments down below, and those will be featured in a future part of this series. But Gabe, it hasn't been a full 12 months of the Switch, but it has been the first calendar year. And we have a lot of good granules of information. We know the biggest games, we know the insane sales, we know the incredible success. And when you contrast it to the Wii U, like just off the top of your head, you think, man, the Switch is dominating the Wii U in every area. It is a resounding achievement, and it has so much hype, and is on such a better course than the Wii U. But when you actually dig in and look at the actual facts and details, strangely, there's more similarities than I think anyone probably imagines.
And, and this isn't like a versus video or anything like that. For me, and I think for you as well, the Switch is just a better piece of hardware, and we acknowledge all of that, but I think there might even be certain things that the Wii U did better in year one. And I know that sounds like super weird, but give us a minute and we'll talk it through. And of course, you can let us know if you agree or disagree. But where are we going to start here, Zach?
I want to start just kind of at the beginning with the overall idea and the launch lineup and the price. And there's again a lot of similarities, right? This is a system that wanted to do something different. It wanted to bring multi-screen gaming to your home in the form of the Wii U gamepad. Now, obviously, as you said, the Switch, a much better, stronger, personally and subjectively more enjoyable piece of hardware. But the Wii U had cool ideas and cool aspirations. It released in configurations of $300 and $350. The Switch obviously released in one package of $300. The 350 version came with that 32 gigabytes of storage, came with Nintendo Land, and the 300 just gave you 8 gigs of storage, which is a little tiny bit at this point in time, and just the system itself. So comparable price. Launch lineup-wise, though, man, the Wii U had a lot of titles, and I forgot just how much third-party support this thing started off with. I'm going to run you through what we had going on, and I want you just to think of this, Gabe, in comparison to the 10 titles that the Switch had. So the Wii U launched with Assassin's Creed 3, Batman Arkham City Armored Edition, Ben 10 Omniverse, Call of Duty Black Ops 2, Chasing Aurora, Darksiders 2, Epic Mickey 2, ESPN Sports Connection, FIFA 13, Funky Barn, Game Party Champions, Just Dance 4, Little Inferno, Madden 13, Mass Effect 3 Special Edition, Mighty SwitchForce, Hyperdrive. Is that okay? Let's just pause. Is that some sort of like weird predictive Nostradamus thing that Mighty SwitchForce launched with the Wii
U? Remember when we first started our channel? People thought that this is where we got the name from. I didn't even know this game existed.
Yeah, no. I'm familiar with Way Forward, but not this one. Okay, just to continue. Nano Assault Neo, NBA 2K13, New Super Mario Bros. U, Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge, Nintendo Land, Rabbids Land. I love how they had that synergy there, right?
Yeah.
Scribblenauts Unlimited, Sing Party, Skylanders Giants, Sonic All-Stars Racing Transformed, Tank, Tekken Tag Tournament 2, Transformers Prime, Trine 2 Director's Cut, Warriors Orochi 3 Hyper, Wipeout 3, Your Shape Fitness, Zombie U, and that is a heck of a line. The third-party support, though, let's look. Assassin's Creed, Batman, Darksiders, Epic Mickey, FIFA, Madden, Mass Effect, NBA, Ninja Gaiden, Rabbids, Scribblenauts, Skylanders, Sonic, Tekken. Holy crap.
I think people right now lose their minds if Mass Effect 3 comes to Switch. And it was on Wii U, on day one. So, it's interesting. Do we want to just read off the Nintendo Switch launch lineup too?
Yeah, let me go through that.
Let me go through that. You've talked enough with these Wii U launch titles. Let me give you the 10 for Nintendo Switch. I am going off of North America because Japan did have some extra ones. 1-2 Switch, Just Dance 2017, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Skylanders Imaginators, Super Bomberman R, I Am Setsuna, Sniper Clips, Shovel Knight Treasure Trove, Shovel Knight, Spectre of Torment, and Fast RMX. Of course, if you include Japan, they had Disgaea 5, they had Puyo Puyo Tetris, and Dragon Quest Heroes 1 and 2, Romance of the Three Kingdoms 13. So other things that just aren't meant for the Western audience. But the Switch had launch window games where things like Binding of Isaac, Afterbirth, Has Been Heroes, things like that came just, merely days and weeks afterwards.
Absolutely. And Wii U, similarly, a couple weeks later, had amazing titles like Rise of the Guardians, the video game, Rapella Pro Bass Fishing, Fake Colors, okay? No, but the third-party support is really, really impressive, and it's strange to see the inverse happen, and it's expected, right, that Wii U started with a ton of third-party support, and Switch had to, Wii U started and lost, Switch, had suspicion and then gained. But what I think is really interesting to note, and I don't want to necessarily go in specific chronological order, but as you move towards the end of the first Wii U year into October 2013, they still were getting strong support. They still had Rayman Legends, Disney Infinity, Just Dance, Skylanders Swap Force, Lego Marvel Superheroes, Batman Arkham Origins, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, Pac-Man, Sonic Lost World, Call of Duty Ghosts. They still were getting quite a few tentpole AAA multi-plat titles, which I think is something that in my hindsight, I totally did not realize was the case.
Well, and the thing that we should maybe touch upon was that the reason the Wii U failed had nothing to do with the games. Again, I feel like people would lose their mind for Call of Duty on Switch. Yet there it was on year one on Nintendo Wii U, and no one cared. Obviously, it goes without saying, the branding of the Wii U didn't do it any favors whatsoever. People thought that it was like an add-on to the Wii. There was a lot of confusion, especially for the more casual audience that was there for the Wii. They just didn't translate. And I think the reason the Wii U was considered a failure can be attributed to a combination of things. But software was not the reason, apparently, because like you, I forgot that all of these things happened. I forgot that there was a Ninja Gaiden game on Wii U on year one. Again, if that happens on Switch, I think people lose it. I think that automatically is one of the top 10 bestsellers, because the hardcore audience is really here for the Nintendo Switch in a way that they weren't for the Wii U.
Oh, for sure. And yes, the Wii U sales-wise, approached 5 million in that year one. Obviously, it got a boost in holiday 2013, and it did see a price cut before the end of that first full year, down to 300 for the deluxe bundle, putting it at the exact same price point as the Switch. But yeah, it's interesting just how the conversation was so drastically different. As you mentioned, Gabe, we're here so pumped, oh my god, we're gonna get freaking Doom on Switch. Oh my god, we're gonna get Morphe's Law, a shooter on Switch, no freaking way. And then you look back at Wii U, they had freaking Splinter Cell, they had freaking Call of Duty, they had 2 years worth of Assassins, and nobody cared. How times have changed.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the hybrid nature of the Switch makes it way more exciting for a lot of these franchises.
For sure.
And another thing that we didn't really say, to me, I feel like the launch lineup for the Switch, while, shorter in numbers, I feel like it's still very strong. Breath of the Wild is bar none better than everything on the Wii U, in my opinion at least. So to start off with that, such a boom, and you started talking about other games that came to the Wii U, later in the year. Of course, we have Super Mario Odyssey in year one. We have Fire Emblem Warriors in year one. We have Xenoblade Chronicles 2. We have ARMS, Splatoon. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's a lot of stuff that came out this year. Nintendo did have a insane year that I think is going to be impossible to replicate again for a very long time.
Yeah, I think that the top tier of titles is unmatched, and while the Wii U did not have anything of that caliber, let me remind you that in their year one, from a first-party standpoint, they did get Game & Wario, New Super Luigi U, Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD, Pikmin 3, and a couple days after, merely, basically 4 days after the first calendar year, they did have their own Mario title in Super Mario 3D World.
Yeah. Not on the same caliber again,
No,
we'll acknowledge.
But decently strong still. You would think that, hey, that's some good Nintendo stuff to promote a healthy, user base, especially considering the third-party support. And I mean, is the simple answer just that the hybrid nature of the Switch is such a killer idea? It all of these issues that the Wii U had just fly out the window because of the concept of the Switch?
Yeah, probably. Hybrid nature plus the pattern. The pattern of, hey, one Nintendo console super successful, next one failure. Next one super successful, next one fail. Like, that is a pattern that some people acknowledge. I don't know how much we're going to touch on it here, but, on top of the games, Wii U had Virtual Console.
Yeah, and that's really interesting as well. And I want to kind of contrast and compare the effect that Virtual Console had for Wii U versus the indie obsession that the Switch has, because there's nowhere near the indie support on Wii U, but there's a ton on Switch. And the Virtual Console launched in April of 2013 with NES and SNES games. That's about 5 months after launch. We're now a solid 9 months after launch and have no sign of Virtual Console. We know we're getting some form of it next year, but is that a sign that the indie support of Switch means more to the overall sales than the Virtual Console?
Things like SteamWorld Dig selling like 20 times more on Switch than on any other platform. I think that's indicative of where some indies lie. Of course, like things like Golf Story and Stardew Valley, doing super well on Switch. There is a burgeoning indie presence here. People love playing these indies on the go, and that, again, the hybrid nature of it just adds so much to it for these smaller games.
Yeah, I think it is interesting, and while a lot of people are like, oh, we want more AAA, we're sick of indies, I do think that very flourishing eShop is very important. In the same way that people love the Vita for its indie darling status, and people love Steam for how many exciting and interesting small games you can get, I feel like that does help the Switch. And maybe, honestly, the handheld nature is just such a big piece of the puzzle. We were surprised to see the numbers when Nintendo revealed how many players exclusively play handheld, exclusively play docked, and how much this is trending towards becoming a 3DS replacement. And we know that Nintendo has no plans of dumping that other platform currently, but I really think that the evolution of the idea from Wii U to Switch, because let's be honest, despite the complete branding switch, the Switch really is kind of a Wii U fully realized, right? It's the Wii U to its most Wii U'd self.
Absolutely, it's a perfected Wii U.
Yeah.
The other reason, in my opinion, that the Switch is a way better console, controls. Right? Automatically comes with the 2 Joy-Con. A lot of people go ahead and purchase a Pro controller. I prefer controlling the Switch. Even, it feels better in your hand. The Switch itself, it doesn't feel like a Fisher-Price toy to me the way that the Wii U did. So I think that also has something to do with it. Plus, it just became culturally relevant, and that goes a long way. When the Wii U became the hit that it... not the Wii U, the original Wii, when that became the hit that it did, a lot of it was just cultural relevance and, grandparents hearing about it and, every time they see one in stock, because that too had like stock issues similar to what the Switch has now. People saw one and they're like, oh, we have to buy one of those. I've heard one of those, like, because it was all over like the news and, the Today Show. Like,
it's that hype and that mind share, and Nintendo had a chance to reset with the Switch, whereas the Wii U was a continuation. People were kind of sick of the Wii. They'd seen that. Some people didn't even know the Wii U was a totally new console. They thought it was just an upgrade. And I think it's also important to note that the Switch came out in a time when, yes, software-wise, thriving, on the PlayStation 4 front, but those consoles are much more in the rear-view mirror, right? The Pro, not as exciting. The Xbox One X, it seems like it has a decent amount of hype, but it's still not a brand-new platform. The Switch basically had its own large padded space to itself, and to come out and say, like, hey, not only is this a brand new idea, not only is this a brand new Nintendo system, but there's nothing that exciting around it, whereas the Switch launched in a time where people were getting prepped and hyped for the PlayStation 4 and for the Xbox One.
Absolutely. And like you said, Pro and X are not as exciting as like wholly brand new generations. We are in what seems like the later years of this generation, but with these re-releases, who knows for how much longer they go. We had 360 and PS3 lasting way longer than anyone expected, and we've heard rumblings of 10-year life cycles for these consoles, and that's cool. I'm sure we get a PS5 and Xbox 2, whatever you want to call it, at some point, but now doesn't seem to be the time. The jump to 4K is being made, and there's been articles about this, but the reason that Nintendo's winning is because they're doing everything completely different. They're not having this race to like graphical like supremacy. They don't care about 4K. Like, that's not something that they're invested in. They just want to make the games, and they want to make them look good. As like a lot of these games are running like a 900p, or like lower resolutions even sometimes. So they want to focus on gameplay. They want to focus on at least making the platform, welcoming to new people. Indie presence is important to them. Other than that, they're doing everything completely different.
Yeah, and that underdog status, I think, kind of behooves them. Like the Switch secured Bethesda. The Switch is getting, today they got confirmation that the new Shin Megami Tensei is coming to the West. And, Bandai Namco, for the third time's the charm there.
That's their fault, not yours.
Yeah, has a bunch of, Switch exclusives for 2018. And, like, that kind of stuff is so exciting because we're, like, championing the Switch and we want to see it do well and we want to take these games on the go with us. Whereas you look at that year one of Wii U and they had tons of titles, and yet that didn't do a whole lot because the overall sentiment, the overall idea, the overall, like you said, cultural mindshare just was not there. But it is so interesting to me to see how much they really did right. Outside of the numbers, take away the sales, you look at that and you would expect that maybe this thing did comparable to the Switch. You look at the game lineup, you look at the virtual console support, you look at the price drop, you look at, third parties, and you say, hey, maybe this thing was a success. And then obviously we know, gosh, this is sort of the point where everything kind of went downhill and they began to lose everything. But I do think that so much is this just ebb and flow and almost this cyclical nature of, like, gain a bunch of momentum, gain a bunch of third-party support, and then lose all of it, and have to reprove themselves. And I think the hope is that the Switch can end that cycle and just continue a trend of upward movement.
Hopefully. And we have zero indication that isn't what's happening. People are back in favor with Nintendo, or Nintendo's back in favor with people, well, however way that goes. And it's cool to like Nintendo again. They just put out the best Mario game in I don't know how many years. Some say since 64.
The best Zelda game.
Yeah, so as long as they continue that, I think they should be okay. And, iteration at some point will become a thing. We've talked about, hey, could we get a Switch with less bezel or with a little bit higher resolution? A number of things go into that, but just Wii U and Switch not being that different, it's super interesting to talk about. And just if you look at the games and year one in general and how it's not that different, and the success being what it is now and the failure being what it was then, it's for sure interesting.
It's interesting. It makes me think that games, maybe it's more of the intangibles. Like, the Switch is a trendy system to carry around. The Wii U is considered a baby device, right? It was a clunky plastic toy. The Switch is like, cool, swap out your Joy-Con. Custom Joy-Con market is really popular, and that big Switch logo is something cool. There's really sexy cases, and people love to see it being played on the plane. And it's like, it has this, just like you said, cool factor that hasn't been around Nintendo for a while. Like, how do you go from having, Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, and Batman, but be considered a kid's machine, to now having, Snipper Clips, Just Dance, and also Zelda Breath of the Wild, but now you're like the cool hip thing. And I do wonder this, and I want to ask you this question, and I guess everybody in the audience as well. If there was a PlayStation 5 and an Xbox 2 launching, this month, do you think that would have impacted the Switch significantly, or is the Switch strong enough that it would have overcame that? Like, how much of the Switch's success is due to the void created by the other companies?
I mean, I think it's in large part. Like, I mean, you said a PS5 and an Xbox 2 coming next month. Like, that definitely takes the wind out of the sails on the Switch a little bit. Because people have short-term memories. They like shiny new hardware and, whatever those next consoles are going to do, right?
Well, and it makes sure that the Switch doesn't seem, even though graphically it is, we acknowledge that, it doesn't seem as much like, oh, this is a few years too late. The Wii U was constantly thought of as like, God, man, they're entering at the end of a gen with a system that belongs to that past gen and going to quickly get overstepped by the new consoles. And Wii U doesn't have that. I don't think people view Xbox One X and PS4 Pro in the same way. I think those are, luxury items that are only being purchased by the most hardcore or by people with a lot of expendable income. And so I think it helps the Switch, alongside its hybrid idea, seem like the forward-thinking machine instead of something that is, quickly losing ground.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that a PS5 like would absolutely kill Switch by any means.
No, but I think it would do damage.
Yeah, of course. The Switch probably wouldn't be the best-selling console for that month or whatever. I mean, depends on how many PS5s it can get out there, and a lot of in this imaginary hypothetical of yours. There's a lot that can go into it, but next year's going to be interesting. Sony has a lot of awesome games coming. They have God of War, they have Days Gone, they have a Spider-Man game. Like, there's so much software coming from them that'll be interesting. Like, do people go and buy like PlayStations for this stuff? Like, I'm sure there's a decent number of people that have been saying, yeah, I want a PlayStation 4, but I'm waiting for God of War, because just that franchise is such a mainstay with PlayStation that I'm sure that those people exist. I mean, similar can be said for Xbox, although Halo, right?
Yeah, I think it is interesting, though, because it'll help us define if the insane perfection of Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey had a huge impact, or if it was more the idea. And I personally, like, if I had to put my marbles in one basket, Gabe, just one, I would say that it's the hybrid nature more so than Mario and Zelda being so darn superior. And I acknowledge that they are. I think they are. But I think that this success is going to continue even when we get Kirby and Yoshi and Metroid and Smash eventually, and maybe Pokemon, although Pokemon you could argue is even more important than maybe Mario or Zelda. But I think that is going to be telling that it really is the conceptual, like we said, like the perfection of this idea in the Switch over the Wii U that is the defining factor, more so than the lineup. I feel like the lineups are closer than maybe some people would like to acknowledge, and next year will really reveal if that's the case.
I agree, but one last thing I kind of want to touch on: 2013 to 2017, right? Not a long time. I mean, yeah, it's years, but digital. Right, the fact that Snipper Clips, Fast RMX, Shovel Knight, smaller games that you only download, like these things were not available on store shelves for the first X amount of months for Switch. Digital seems to be way more mainstream now. People have no problem just like buying everything digital. Back in 2013, was it as easy to maybe just go on there and like buy like Wii U like games digitally? Like I'm sure it was. Like Like, it's not like the Stone Ages or anything, but I feel like broadband in America has gotten better, and I can only speak for America. I'm not from anywhere else. So I think downloading games has become way more normal now than it was back then, even though it was also normal back then. I'm not saying it wasn't. But the fact that like Snipper Clips did like super well in the beginning because A, there wasn't too many other games, and B, cheaper price and digital only. So I feel like that, on top of the indie stuff, has like made the Switch like the perfect hybrid console. So...
Absolutely. And I do think, again, that indie support, even though sometimes it's like, more indies, it does put the Switch more in that kind of like phone tablet style of like, hey, you can carry around a bunch of these smaller games for smaller price points, and I think that's important. And yes, you could do the same with, the NES titles or the SNES titles, but one, you could not bring them with you, and two, there's a different mentality when it's a brand new game versus a past game. And there was a little bit of controversy over, still like, the Wii to Wii U transition and game lineup and blah, blah, blah. All of that, I think, was a muckier market than, hey, we got SteamWorld Dig 2 first. We got, great ports of Stardew Valley. We got this awesome exclusive golf story. We have, Snipper Clips, and we have Mr. Shifty, and we have Graceful Explosion. I really think it's important how much support, and even future titles, Yooka-Laylee, Enter the Gungeon, Hollow Knight, Floor Kids, Wargroove, Tiny Metal, I think that has played a large role. And we're curious to hear what you think are the defining factors of why the Switch has been such a freaking phenomenal success in comparison to the Wii U, and how you feel after taking a look back, a glance into 2012 and 2013, and what that lineup was like, what that price point was like, what their plan was like. Introducing Virtual Console early, introducing an early price drop, and trying to compete with the likes of Call of Duty, Splinter Cell, Assassin's Creed, and Batman. Talk at us. We'll be back in the next part of this series. We hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we cannot wait to continue our Wii U Switch discussion. Until that time, everybody, make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest from the Switch. And of course, the next part of this video, hopefully some of your comments will be featured in that video. We'll definitely try to incorporate as many as we can. But for now, for myself and Gabe, thanks for watching. SwitchForce out.